A quiet shopping trip turns into a global spectacle when a mall manager confronts a man over a simple red hat, only to discover it's none other than Elon Musk. What starts as a disagreement spirals into a social media frenzy, sparking debates around the world. But what happens next will leave everyone stunned. Elon wasn't there to make a statement or attract attention. Perhaps he was there to observe everyday life, to connect with the world in a way that his fame rarely allowed. Or maybe he was just grabbing a coffee before heading to his next meeting. Whatever the reason, it didn't take long before his presence, and his hat, caught the attention of someone who wasn't pleased. The mall manager, a sharp and no-nonsense woman named Susan, had been making her morning rounds. She prided herself on maintaining a peaceful and welcoming environment at the mall. Her rules were clear: no disruptive behavior, no political demonstrations, and no controversies. She believed that the mall was a place where people could escape the chaos of the world and simply enjoy themselves. And today, she noticed something or someone that didn't sit well with her. Susan's eyes zeroed in on the man with the MAGA hat. To her, the hat was a symbol of division, controversy, and everything she worked hard to keep out of the mall. She didn't know who the man was. He looked like any other customer to her. But the hat was enough to make her decide that something needed to be done. She wasn't about to let the atmosphere of her mall be disrupted, no matter who the person was. As Elon sipped his coffee at a small shop near the food court, Susan approached him with a stern look on her face. Her mind was made up. The hat had to go or the man had to leave. She wasn't interested in a debate or a discussion. Rules were rules, and she was determined to enforce them. "Excuse me, sir," Susan began, her tone firm but polite. "I'm going to have to ask you to remove your hat or leave the premises. We don't allow political statements here." Elon turned to face her, a look of mild surprise on his face. He wasn't used to being confronted like this, especially over something as simple as a hat. For a moment, he didn't say anything. He simply looked at Susan, as if trying to gauge whether she was serious. "I'm just here for coffee," Elon replied calmly. His tone wasn't defensive or confrontational, just matter-of-fact. But Susan wasn't swayed. To her, the rules were clear, and this man, whoever he was breaking them. She repeated her request, this time with more urgency. "Sir, I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave if you can't comply. We have a strict policy against political symbols in the mall." By now, a few people nearby had started to notice the interaction. Some stopped to watch, curious about what was happening. The scene wasn't loud or dramatic, at least not yet, but there was an undeniable tension in the air. As the conversation continued, whispers began to spread through the small crowd that had gathered. "What's going on?" someone asked. "Why is the manager talking to him like that?" Another person wondered. Still, nobody seemed to recognize Elon Musk. To them, he was just another shopper in a red hat, being confronted by an overzealous manager. Elon didn't argue or raise his voice. Instead, he asked a simple question: "Why does a hat bother you so much?" Susan's response was quick and to the point. "It's not about the hat, it's about what it represents. We don't want any conflicts or controversies here. This is a family-friendly place." Her words might have made sense to some, but to others they felt unfair. After all, the man wasn't causing any trouble, he was just minding his own business. A few voices from the crowd began to chime in. "He's not doing anything wrong," one person said. "Leave him alone," another added. The situation was escalating, and it was clear that things weren't going to end quietly. What started as a simple moment in the mall was quickly becoming something much bigger. But nobody, not the manager, not the crowd, and not even Elon himself, could have predicted just how far this incident would go. Chapter 2. The crowd grows and tension builds. As Susan stood her ground, the crowd around them began to grow. Shoppers who had been walking by stopped to watch the scene unfold, their curiosity piqued by the unusual confrontation. At first, only a few people had noticed the exchange, but word traveled fast. Soon, a small circle of onlookers had gathered, and they were whispering to each other, trying to figure out what was going on. "What's happening over there?" one man asked his wife as they walked out of a clothing store. She shrugged, but they both decided to move closer to the scene. Others did the same. It didn't take long before a sizable group had formed. Susan could feel the weight of the crowd's eyes on her. Normally, she didn't care about being the center of attention, she was used to handling mall disputes. However, this situation felt different. Something about the man's calm demeanor unsettled her. Most people would have either complied or gotten angry by now, but this man remained composed, as if nothing could shake him. A teenager standing near the edge of the crowd suddenly gasped. "Wait a second," he whispered to his friend. "I think that's Elon Musk." His friend's eyes widened. "No way," she said. "Why would Elon Musk be here? That can't be him." But the boy wasn't convinced. He pulled out his phone and quickly searched for a recent photo of Elon Musk. The more he compared the image to the man standing in front of Susan, the more certain he became. "I'm telling you that's him," he said. "Look at the face. Look at the way he's standing. It has to be Elon Musk." Within moments, the rumors spread like wildfire. More and more people in the crowd began murmuring about the possibility that the man in the red hat was one of the most famous entrepreneurs in the world. Some took out their phones to snap pictures and record videos, hoping to capture what they suspected would be a viral moment. Meanwhile, Susan remained oblivious to the growing realization around her. To her, this was still just a simple case of enforcing mall rules. She didn't know or care whether the man was famous. All that mattered to her was the hat and what it represented. "I'm giving you one last chance," she said firmly, her voice carrying across the now silent crowd. "Remove the hat or leave the mall." The tension in the air was almost palpable. The crowd waited with bated breath to see how the man would respond. Elon looked around slowly, taking in the faces of the people who had gathered to watch. He could see the mix of curiosity, confusion, and anticipation in their eyes. He wasn't the type to make a scene, but he also wasn't the type to back down when he felt he was being treated unfairly. "I don't think I'm doing anything wrong," Elon said softly, his tone still calm. "I'm just here for coffee. That's all." But Susan wasn't budging. She crossed her arms over her chest, signaling that the conversation was over. At that moment, one of the bystanders stepped forward. "Hey, leave him alone," the man said loudly. "He's not hurting anyone." Another voice chimed in from the back of the crowd. "Yeah, he has a right to wear whatever he wants." Soon, more people were speaking up in support of Elon. The crowd's energy shifted, and the atmosphere grew even more intense. Some people were angry at the mall manager for what they saw as unnecessary harassment. Others were simply curious about how the situation would end. Susan began to feel the pressure. She hadn't expected such a strong reaction from the crowd. Usually, when she enforced the mall's rules, people either complied or left without a fuss. This was different. This was quickly turning into a public spectacle, and it was getting harder to control. Still, she refused to back down. "Rules are rules," she said firmly, though there was a hint of nervousness in her voice. The crowd wasn't satisfied with that answer. More voices joined in, and the murmur of discontent grew louder. It was clear that many people disagreed with Susan's stance, and they weren't afraid to let her know. At that moment, someone in the crowd shouted, "It is Elon Musk! Look at him!" The declaration sent a ripple of excitement through the onlookers. Phones were raised higher, and people began snapping photos and recording videos at an even faster pace. The realization that they were witnessing a confrontation involving one of the world's most famous billionaires only added to the intensity of the situation. Susan's eyes widened slightly as she finally began to understand who she was dealing with. She didn't follow celebrity news closely, but even she had heard of Elon Musk. Still, she was torn. On one hand, she didn't want to back down, doing so would make her look weak in front of the crowd. On the other hand, the last thing she wanted was to end up on the news for kicking out a global icon. Elon remained calm, but he could sense the shift in the air. He didn't want things to escalate any further. "I'm not here to cause any trouble," he said. "I'll leave if that's what you want." But before Susan could respond, someone in the crowd shouted, "No! Stay! You're not doing anything wrong." The crowd erupted into a chorus of voices, each shouting their own opinion. Some sided with Elon, insisting that he should be allowed to stay. Others supported Susan, arguing that rules were rules, no matter who the person was. The debate grew louder and more heated with each passing moment. The situation had spiraled out of control, and there was no easy way to bring it back under control. What started as a simple conversation between a mall manager and a customer had turned into a public spectacle with far-reaching implications. And little did anyone know, the world was about to find out. Chapter 3. Social media takes over, the internet reacts in full force. As the situation at the mall intensified, more people began live-streaming the confrontation on social media. Within minutes, videos of the scene were being uploaded to various platforms. Clips showing Elon Musk standing his ground, the mall manager's stern warnings, and the crowd's heated reactions spread like wildfire. One particular video, recorded by a young woman standing near the front of the crowd, captured the entire incident from start to finish. She had started recording as soon as she heard the mall manager's request for Elon to remove his hat. Her video, titled "Mall Manager Confronts Man Over MAGA Hat," is that Elon Musk quickly gained traction online. Viewers from around the world tuned in to watch the unfolding drama. Some were curious about the man in the red hat, trying to determine whether he was really Elon Musk. Others were more interested in the debate over freedom of expression. Was it fair for the mall manager to ask someone to leave simply because of a hat? Or was she justified in enforcing the mall's rules? As the video continued to circulate, hashtags like #MAGA incident, #mall drama, and hashtag #IsItElon started trending on social media. The debate spilled over into comment sections, with users from all walks of life sharing their opinions. "This is outrageous," one person commented. "If that really is Elon Musk, the manager just made a huge mistake." Another user wrote, "It doesn't matter who he is. If the mall has rules, he should follow them." Others were more focused on the larger implications of the situation. "This isn't just about a hat. It's about freedom of speech and expression. If we can't wear what we want in public, what's next?" Celebrities and public figures also began chiming in. Some voiced their support for Elon, while others defended the mall manager's actions. The incident quickly became a hot topic of discussion on news programs and talk shows. Suddenly, everyone seemed to have an opinion on what had happened at the mall that day. Back at the scene, Elon remained calm despite the growing chaos around him. He could see that the situation had escalated far beyond what anyone had anticipated. He wasn't interested in turning this into a public spectacle, but he also felt that he couldn't simply walk away now, not with so many eyes on him. Susan, on the other hand, was starting to feel overwhelmed. The weight of the crowd's judgment, combined with the knowledge that their interaction was being broadcast to the world, was taking a toll on her confidence. She had only been trying to enforce the mall's rules, but now it felt like she was at the center of a controversy she hadn't signed up for. A security guard arrived on the scene, alerted by the noise and commotion. He approached Susan and quietly asked what was going on. Susan explained the situation as best as she could, but it was clear that things had already spiraled out of her control. The security guard looked at Elon, then at the crowd, and then back at Susan. "We've got a situation here," he said under his breath. "We need to de-escalate this, and fast." Meanwhile, the crowd continued to grow louder. Some people were chanting in support of Elon, while others called for calm. The mall, which had started the day as a place of quiet shopping and relaxation, had turned into a scene of chaos and division. Suddenly, someone in the crowd shouted, "Why are we even arguing about this? Just let the man shop in peace." That comment seemed to resonate with many of the onlookers. The crowd's energy shifted once again, this time toward a collective desire for the situation to end peacefully. Elon took a deep breath and turned to Susan. "Look," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "I don't want to cause any trouble. If it's better for everyone, I'll leave." Susan hesitated. She could see that Elon wasn't trying to be difficult or confrontational. He was just a man who had come to the mall for coffee, and things had gotten out of hand. Before she could respond, the security guard stepped in. "Let's find a way to resolve this without anyone leaving," he suggested. "There's no need for things to go any further." The crowd fell silent, waiting to see what would happen next. All eyes were on Susan and Elon. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Susan nodded. "All right," she said. "You can stay." A wave of relief washed over the crowd. Some people cheered, while others simply nodded in approval. The tension that had filled the air moments ago began to dissipate. Elon thanked Susan and the security guard, then turned back to his coffee. He didn't say anything more, there was no need to. His calm demeanor had spoken louder than any words could have. As the crowd began to disperse, many people continued to record and take photos, knowing that the incident would be talked about for days to come. And sure enough, by the time Elon left the mall later that day, the story had already reached news outlets around the world. But the real surprise was yet to come. Chapter 4. The aftermath. A global debate begins. By the time Elon Musk walked out of the mall, the incident had already exploded on social media. News channels had picked up the story, with headlines like, "Mall Confrontation, Was Elon Musk Kicked Out Over a Hat?" and "Freedom of Expression or Mall Rules." The internet reacts to Elon Musk incident. Clips of the confrontation flooded video sharing platforms. The original video, uploaded just hours ago, had been shared millions of times. Influencers, politicians, and everyday citizens all weighed in, turning the mall incident into a viral moment with global reach. For many, the incident symbolized something larger than just a disagreement about a hat. Some argued it was a matter of personal freedom and the right to express oneself. Others felt it highlighted the tensions that had become all too common in public spaces. And some saw it as an example of how fame could complicate even the simplest interactions. Elon Musk himself remained silent about the incident, choosing not to make any public statements. However, that didn't stop people from debating his actions. Some praised his calm and collected demeanor during the confrontation, while others questioned why he had chosen to wear such a controversial hat in the first place. Susan, the mall manager, found herself thrust into the public eye in a way she had never expected. The video of her confrontation with Elon had gone viral, and now she was receiving messages from people around the world. Some praised her for standing by the mall's rules, while others criticized her for what they saw as an overreaction. News outlets began reaching out to Susan for interviews. At first, she declined all requests, not wanting to draw any more attention to herself. But as the pressure mounted, she realized she couldn't avoid the spotlight forever. Finally, she agreed to speak with a local news station to share her side of the story. During the interview, Susan explained that she had only been trying to do her job. "The mall has a policy against clothing that could cause conflict," she said. "I wasn't trying to target anyone personally. I just wanted to keep the peace." Her words did little to quell the debate. If anything, they added more fuel to the fire. Critics argued that the mall's policy was too vague and open to interpretation, while supporters insisted that Susan had done the right thing. As the days passed, the incident continued to dominate headlines. Talk shows featured heated debates about freedom of expression and the limits of public rules. Social media platforms were flooded with posts and videos dissecting every detail of the confrontation. Memes featuring Elon in his red hat circulated widely, some humorous and others deeply political. The mall itself became an unexpected tourist attraction. People from nearby towns flocked to the shopping center, hoping to see the spot where the now famous confrontation had taken place. Some even wore red hats in solidarity with Elon, while others came out to support Susan and the mall's management. Meanwhile, Elon Musk's fanbase rallied around him, creating hashtags like #StandWithElon and #FreedomOfHat to show their support. Some fans even launched petitions calling for the mall to publicly apologize to Elon. Amid all the chaos, Elon finally broke his silence. In a brief post on his social media account, he wrote, "There are bigger things in the world to focus on. Let's move forward." His message was short and simple, but it resonated with many. Some interpreted it as a call for unity, while others saw it as a reminder to not get caught up in minor dispute. However, not everyone was ready to move on. Some activists saw the incident as an opportunity to push for clearer policies in public spaces. They argued that malls, restaurants, and other businesses should provide more transparency about their rules to avoid future conflict. Others called for better training for mall staff to handle situations involving high-profile individuals. Susan, for her part, decided to take a break from her job. The stress of the incident had taken a toll on her, and she needed time to reflect on everything that had happened. The mall's management supported her decision, acknowledging that the situation had been difficult for everyone involved. As the world continued to debate the incident, one thing became clear. This was no longer just a story about a hat. It had become a symbol of the ongoing struggle between personal freedom, public rules, and the complexities of modern society. And while the mall incident eventually faded from the headlines, its impact would be felt for a long time to come. Chapter 5. Unexpected Consequences. Susan's journey takes a turn in the days following the incident. Susan found herself in an unfamiliar position. The once anonymous mall manager was now a household name, recognized by people both in her town and beyond. Every time she went out, someone would approach her to ask about the confrontation with Elon Musk. Some offered words of support, while others weren't as kind. Despite the overwhelming attention, Susan tried to stay positive. However, the stress of being in the public eye began to wear on her. She had taken a leave of absence from her job at the mall, hoping to distance herself from the controversy. But even at home, the messages, phone calls, and media inquiries kept coming. One day, Susan received an unexpected email. It was from a producer at a well-known talk show, inviting her to come on the show and share her side of the story. Initially, Susan was hesitant. She wasn't sure if she wanted to relive the incident on national television. But after discussing it with her family and friends, she decided to accept the invitation. When the day of the interview arrived, Susan felt nervous but determined. She wanted to use the opportunity to clear the air and offer her perspective on what had happened. The host of the talk show greeted her warmly and started the interview with a simple question. "Susan, how are you holding up?" Susan took a deep breath before answering. "It's been a challenging time," she admitted. "I never expected something like this to happen. I was just doing my job that day, trying to follow the mall's policies. I didn't want to cause a scene, and I certainly didn't want anyone to feel disrespected." The audience listened intently as Susan shared her experience. She explained how the situation had escalated so quickly and how overwhelmed she had felt in the moment. "I didn't realize who he was at first," she added. "And by the time I did, everything was already out of control." The host asked Susan what she had learned from the experience. "I've learned that we all need to approach situations with more empathy and understanding," she said. "Sometimes we're so focused on following rules that we forget to see the person standing in front of us." The interview ended with a message of hope and reconciliation. Susan expressed her wish for people to move past the incident and focus on kindness and unity. "We all make mistakes," she said. "What matters is how we grow from them." After the interview aired, Susan received an outpouring of support. Many viewers praised her for her honesty and courage, and some even called for the mall to reinstate her. the mall's management reached out to Susan with a heartfelt apology, acknowledging that the situation could have been handled better. They offered her a new role as a community relations manager, a position that would allow her to help improve communication between the mall and its customers. Susan accepted the offer, feeling hopeful for the first time in weeks. She realized that the incident had given her a unique opportunity to make positive changes, both for herself and for others. Meanwhile, Elon Musk's brief statement urging people to move forward continued to resonate with the public. Over time, the heated debates and viral videos began to fade into the background. The world moved on to new stories and new controversies, leaving the mall incident as a distant memory. In the end, the incident at the mall became more than just a story about rules and hat. It was a lesson in empathy, understanding, and the importance of handling conflicts with grace. For Susan, it marked the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with growth, forgiveness, and the promise of a brighter future.